Good afternoon. This is the Filipino Bar Association of Northern California's workshop, Know Your Rights. My name is Givelle Lamano, and I am with Lamano Law Office. A quick disclaimer, this information in this presentation does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and materials available during this presentation are for general information purposes only. I'll leave a few seconds for us to read the remaining parts of the disclaimer. Okay, we are now going to go into my introduction, who I am, and the name of my law firm, Lamano Law Office. We are a criminal defense law firm located in Oakland, California. We defend people accused of crimes and help clean up criminal records. We do have a 98% success rate with over 1,000 clients served and have been recognized as super lawyers from 2017 to present. And we have been featured on Forbes, INC, and the Daily Journal. The topics of discussion for today are the types of crimes in California, what is a wobbler, the different types of relief available for record cleanup, frequently asked questions, and finally Q&A. So let's talk about the three different types of crimes in California. And just before we go into that, let's address that there are state crimes and then there are federal crimes. Today, we are going to be talking about state crimes and the three levels of crimes in California. At the bottom level is what is known as an infraction. An infraction is essentially a ticket that you might receive from a police officer for jaywalking, speeding. It doesn't necessarily require you to attend a court appearance or to go to a hearing. An infraction is a low level offense that oftentimes you can take care of without having to go to court, generally by paying a fine or doing some classes. That is the lowest level type of offense of crime in California. Above an infraction is what's called a misdemeanor. A misdemeanor could include things like driving under the influence, domestic violence, theft, low level crimes that don't necessarily require you to do jail time or prison time. It's important to note that in California, the difference between jail and prison is jail is generally serving time 364 days or less. So basically, if you're serving up to a year of custody time, that is considered jail time. And jails are local. For example, you have the San Francisco jail, or in Alameda County, you may have the Dublin jailhouse. Above a misdemeanor is what's called a felony. A felony are serious and violent type of crimes. And generally, not only do they require a court appearance, at least on your first court date, they also have exposures of prison time. And prison time, again, is different from jail time in that it's a year or more. Prisons are generally further away. For example, a lot of times somebody may be sentenced to go to prison and then get transferred from the jail where they are housed. So the purpose of me talking about the three different types of crimes in California is a lot of times people get mixed up when they get arrested and they may say, when is my trial, or what's going to happen on my first court date. The first thing to address is, what type of a crime are you being accused of? Is it an infraction? Is it a misdemeanor, or is it a felony? Very oftentimes, if it's an infraction or a misdemeanor, you can hire an attorney to handle it for you and go to court for you. Whereas if it's a felony, it's a more serious and violent type of crime. I wanted to introduce what the three levels of crimes were before we talked about the next topic of discussion, which is, what is a wobbler? Wobblers are crimes that can wobble up or wobble down. For example, somebody could be arrested for a misdemeanor DUI, and let's just say that there's an accident in that DUI, and the person that was in the other vehicle involved in the accident that wasn't drinking and driving suffered great bodily injury as a result of the person drinking and driving. That may turn the misdemeanor DUI into a felony. Another common wobbler could be theft. If crimes of theft where the value is over $950, that could also be a felony. It could start off as a misdemeanor, but then later rise to a felony. Also, another common wobbler, not just driving under the influence, but domestic violence. A lot of times people have issues at home where we get into a fight with our spouse and the police are called. You may get a ticket that tells you you have to come to court for a misdemeanor domestic violence. But if there's great bodily injury involved or child endangerment, it may wobble up to a felony. Now, vice versa, if you are being arrested for a felony, it could later wobble down to a misdemeanor. And just like there are three different types of crimes in California, some of those crimes are what's known as wobblers. Again, examples of a wobbler could be driving under the influence, depending on if there's accident or injury or death involved, domestic violence cases, theft cases, and even some cases that involve firearms. So again, as a recap, what we are going to talk about today are the type of crimes that we have in California, and we've addressed that we have three different types of state crimes in California. We've addressed what a wobbler is, and a wobbler is a crime that can either be charged as a misdemeanor or a felony, and it could wobble up and down. So we've talked about that, and we've given examples of what a wobbler is. Now that we have that information and that foundation, I want to talk about the different types of relief that may be available to you if you're trying to clean up your criminal record. But what are some of the reasons that you may want to clean up your criminal record? It could include that you're applying for a new job and there's going to be a background check involved. You could be applying for anything that requires you to fill out a paper application, whether it's to receive privileges of global entry or TSA pre at the airport so you can travel freely without having to go through security. Another reason is that you may be requesting assistance with government financing for your business. There's so many different reasons why you may want to clean up your record. It could even be that you're trying to petition somebody from your home country to come over here for immigration purposes. The reasons to clean up your record are endless. But in the unfortunate event that you actually do have a criminal record and you want to clean it up, it's important to at least identify the three different types of crimes that you have in California, whether your crime is considered a wobbler, before we go into the types of different relief available to you to clean up your record. So the first one is what's called a Penal Code 17B motion. This is a remedy where you can ask the court to drop your felony down to a misdemeanor. So say, for example, you want to clean up your record and you have a felony. One option for you is to first drop that felony down to a misdemeanor, assuming that it's a wobbler, which is why we wanted to talk about that earlier. The second remedy that may be available to you is a Penal Code 1203.4 motion. This is a motion to dismiss the charges against you in the interest of justice. So an example of this is, let's say that you went out to a party, had too many drinks, got into a car accident, the police came to help, they ended up arresting you, and you get convicted of driving under the influence as a felony because some of the victims involved in the accident suffered great bodily injury. Then you completed all the terms of your sentence, any jail time or community service that you might have to do. You paid all your fines, you did your DUI school, you completed your probation without any problems, and then later you want to clean up your record. What we may want to do in that case is file a 17B motion so that that felony DUI can wobble down to a misdemeanor DUI. And once we have dropped it down to a misdemeanor DUI, what we can then do is dismiss the charges in the interest of justice because you completed all of the terms of your sentence. Now, it's important to note that not all crimes fall into the section of wobblers. In other words, there are some crimes that stay as felonies and can't wobble down to a misdemeanor. That doesn't mean that you are not eligible to have the charges dismissed in the interest of justice. And it's also important to note that not everybody is eligible to file a 17B motion, either because it's not a wobbler or they haven't completed the terms of their sentence. And the same applies applies to the Penal Code 1203.4 motion. In other words, you can't clean up your record until you have completed what you were responsible for as part of your sentence with the court. And generally, that means finishing up your probation. And probation can either mean be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Probation generally means that you're on thin ice. And if for some reason you commit another criminal offense while you're on probation, you will get taken into custody on a no bail status, which means you can't pay a bail bondsman to get you out of jail because you were on probation and you weren't supposed to violate the law again. Okay, so going back to the different types of relief, we talked about a Penal Code 17B motion, which means we want to drop your felony down to a misdemeanor. We also talked about a dismissal in the interest of justice, either after a 17B motion or standing alone if it's just a basic misdemeanor. And a dismissal in the interest of justice means that you completed the terms of your sentence and you want to clean up your record. The third remedy available is called a factual innocence motion. Sometimes people are arrested and charges are never filed against them. And they were actually factually innocent and should not have been arrested or detained in the first place. An example of this is rather than being the aggressor and the person being arrested, they were actually the victim in the case. Or it could be a matter of mistaken identity. There's so many reasons why somebody may be wrongfully accused and actually factually innocent. A factual innocence motion falls under Penal Code 851. A motion would be filed with the court asking the court to recognize that you are factually innocent and you should not have been investigated and arrested and not have a criminal record. A factual innocence motion is a little harder, or actually a lot harder than a Penal Code 1203.4 or a 17B motion. In both of number one and number two, the 17B motion and the Penal Code 1203.4 motion, it means that you were actually convicted of something. Whereas in a factual innocence 851 motion, it doesn't actually mean that you were convicted of something. You're just saying, I'm factually innocent and I would like to explore that remedy and have the court recognize that I was factually innocent. Some of the places that I've seen this happen in include, let's say that you're in the middle of a divorce and your spouse wrongfully accuses you of inappropriately touching a minor. You know, we see that happen a lot because the person may want to get ahead in their divorce case. You know, it could really ruin your reputation, ruin your record, and, you know, just really take away your peace of mind knowing that somebody made an accusation against you that attacks your character. Having a factual innocence motion may help you because if anybody asks you about that, whether it's a future employer, anybody that does a background check, you could say, yes, I was accused of that, but I am actually factually innocent, which is what Penal Code 851 is. The fourth and the final type of relief is what's called sealing an arrest record, and that also falls under Penal Code 851. Sealing an arrest record is for people who were arrested of something and the charges were not filed against them. Now, it's important to note that you can actually do both of these. You can seal your arrest record and you can file a motion for factual innocence. Sealing your arrest record, it may or may not be worth the return of investment depending on your personal situation. For example, we have people who are arrested of a crime who contact us and they say they want to seal their arrest record, but it may not make sense either because they're retired. It doesn't make sense for them to do it because it's not like there's going to be a background check on them anyway, or they may be an entrepreneur. And it just really doesn't make sense for them to worry too much about their background check because a lot of times people feel like they just want to seal their arrest record before they die because it's the right thing to do, when generally you can spend the money that you would be paying in legal fees on something with a better return of investment, whether it's a high yield savings account with cumulative interest or whatever. In any event, the four different types of relief, and the last one is sealing your arrest record, and this is for people who were arrested. It's important to note that sometimes people are arrested and then later they get a letter in the mail that says that they are calling the arrest a detention only. In that situation, there may not be an arrest record to seal because the police are now calling your arrest a detention only. Another caveat to that is whether or not your address with the Department of Motor Vehicles or with what the courts have in file may not be up to date. In other words, sometimes people get arrested and then they receive a letter in the mail that they considered the arrest a detention only, but they never received the letter because their address with the Department of Motor Vehicles was not updated, or they received mail at an old address that they are no longer residing in. So, as a summary, we were talking about the types of crimes in California, and the types of crimes include a low level infraction, a misdemeanor, which may or may not require jail time, and then a felony. A felony are the serious and violent crimes that could include prison time. We talked about what is a wobbler. A wobbler is a crime that can wobble up to a felony or wobble down to a misdemeanor or an infraction. And depending on what type of crime you have, we can go into the types of relief. The first type of relief is a 17B motion to drop your felony down to a wobbler, down to a misdemeanor, assuming that it is a wobbler. The second type of relief is a dismissal in the interest of justice. And a dismissal in the interest of justice is if you served all the terms of your sentence. And then the third one that we have is a factual innocence motion. And that's for somebody who was wrongfully arrested and factually innocent, and they want the paperwork from court and an order from a judge to prove it. And then the fourth and the final one is a motion to seal your arrest record, which again, based on your personal lifestyle, may or may not make sense, and depending on what your financial resources are and whether it's worth the return of investment. The last thing that we're going to go into is frequently asked questions. Some of the frequently asked questions that our firm tends to get is, what will my background check show? So there are different record keepers. One of the main ones is the DOJ, the Department of Justice. The DOJ generally keeps background information of every single crime that you may have been involved in throughout the United States. And you can get a copy of your Department of Justice record by requesting it. It's free, and a lot of times you'll have to go to a place that's called a live scan. A live scan place is generally a place where you will give your fingerprint, your social security number, and they'll verify your identity before sending you a full copy of your background check. Now, the Department of Justice is a great place to start to get a copy of your background check because it'll come all across the United States. And if you've ever had issues of identity theft, or if you're not sure about all of your prior histories and arrest, a background check through the Department of Justice is a detailed way to go. So the question is, what will show up on my background check? Well, some people think that if they clean up their record, that it's just going to completely fall off of their background check. That's not necessarily true. Very often what you'll find is the date that you were arrested, the date that you were convicted, and then the date that you filed the relief. So just going back to our past example of driving under the influence, let's say that you were arrested on January 1st for a DUI. You were convicted of that DUI on February 1st, and then you cleaned up your record 3 years later. What it'll show is you were arrested on January 1st, another line item showed that you were convicted on February 1st, and then another line item a few years later that shows that you cleaned up your record. The next frequently asked question is, how will this affect job applications? This is generally a question for an employment lawyer because, again, it really depends on what type of a job you're applying for. If you are looking for a job as a truck driver, or if you are looking for a job as a school bus driver, it may affect you if you have a DUI on your record. If you are being charged with, if you've been convicted of embezzlement or theft or some type of crime of moral turpitude, it may affect your job application depending on what type of a job you're looking for and what your history is. The third question that we often get is, who can see my record? Anybody can go online and do a private background check on somebody. And a lot of times these background checks pull information from different places like the Department of Motor Vehicles, other databases. So really, a lot of people can see your record, and that record may not be accurate. If you seal your arrest record under Penal Code 851, it doesn't seal it from everybody. It may seal it from the public, but it doesn't seal it from government agencies, the FBI, the CIA, local police agencies, San Francisco Police Department, Oakland Police Department, and so forth. Another common question that we get is, how long will it take to clean up my record? It really depends on the court and the jurisdiction that you're in. For example, in Alameda County, it generally has a 4 to 6 month turnaround time. Most of the time, you will have to serve different parties a copy of your paperwork, including the court, the district attorney's office, the probation department, and a lot of times they need 45 days notice, depending on the courtroom and the jurisdiction. And so it takes 45 days to give all different parties notice. You also have to wait to get a court date on calendar, which could take also some time. And then there may also be a hearing. So we like to quote 3 to 6 months. And especially post COVID, things can take even longer. So these are the frequently asked questions that we tend to get. If you have any other questions, I ask that you keep in touch. You can go ahead and scan this barcode, which will take you to our different links, including Linktree, linktr.ee/lamanolaw.com. You can also copy this link for a complimentary 15-minute consultation if you have specific questions for our law firm. Again, the disclaimer is that this is not legal advice, but rather educational and general information. I cannot give legal advice or answer questions about any specific situations that you have here, but what we can do is waive our $250 consultation fee if you want actual legal advice. Thank you so much, FBANC, for putting on this Know Your Rights workshop. Givelle Lamano from Lamano Law Office. I'm honored to be here and willing to help all of my fellow Filipinos. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.